Hello and welcome to At the 55, your home for U Sports Football. Me and Tom are back on the mics with a new installment of the Exit Meeting series. We are coming near to the end, which means it's only big hitters from here on out. And we have one of the biggest hitters joining us to talk about his new but old club. We'll get into all that and so much more, talking about his Laurier Golden Hawks. But first, Tom, how the heck are you doing, my friend?
Oh, man, I am doing so well. We are with a guy who you had a chance to be under his offense as well back in the red and black days. This is a man who is no stranger to winning 3 Loney Bowl championships, 3 Yates Cup championships, and a Vanier Cup championship with that team in Kitchener. Ladies and gentlemen, brand new head coach of the Laurier Golden Hawks, Todd Galloway is here. Coach, how are you doing on this fine day?
I'm doing great. I know a few other people have said it as well, but we got to carry you around as our hype man. You did such a great job.
He's like a trumpeter in old times. Coach, obviously we'll talk a lot about your journey from Laurier, going around a bit, around U Sports, making your way back, the role you had for so many years working with Coach Falls. We'll talk about your relationship there to now being the head coach. But having spent so much time with the team as a player, as a coach, in such high leverage moments, championship games over quite a span now, was there something that clicked when Coach Falls made his decision, when you knew that you were going to become the head coach of this program that you've been a part of in so many capacities for so long? Was there a mental switch, or did something dawn on you? It's a program that you're so familiar with, but was there something, a feeling, an emotion where you're like, golly, I'm now the head coach of the Laurier Golden Hawks? Like, what's that been like? I mean, it's only been a few months now, but that must have been a pretty surreal moment to go through.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I'll be the first to admit that before this, I was never chasing trying to be a head coach. I love what I do, and in fact, I'm still going to do the offense here. But it just seemed like the right time, right? And I kind of reflect on the journey a little bit, and I loved my time at Laurier as a player. I loved my time at Laurier as a fly on the wall young coach under Coach Gary Jeffries and that whole staff with Steph Potasic and Ron. And it kind of came full circle when it did happen, and kind of said that this seems like the right time. This seems like the right moment. Laurier is a team that invests in their future and invests in their coach. And there's actually not been a lot of head coaches in Laurier's history. And so these opportunities don't come around very often. And so kind of timing met opportunity. And if this was 5-10 years ago, I wouldn't have felt like I was a good enough coach to do my alma mater justice. And so you kind of live and you grow and you learn new experiences, and it just felt like the right time.
Well, certainly you've got a list of amazing accomplishments. You were pretty damn close to being the head coach at another certain university, and they decided to go another route, choose another guy. Well, we all know how that went and ended up going, Mr. Bader Shammai. But in that time, in that transitionary period, you come over to McMaster. And you're a part of that, but it's a very interesting setup there because you're not quite the offensive coordinator, but you are the offensive assistant. You are helping things out. And yet when I speak to a lot of those former McMaster players from 2019, I ask, okay, what was the biggest difference from 18 to 19? They go, all of them go, it's Corey Grant and it's Todd Galloway. Like, it's the two guys just brought a new level to the offense, and we were able to really explode. Now, again, we talked about this before, and I think in that intro that I had for you, I think I should have been adding quarterback whisperer in there because you had Andreas Dueck, who was there slinging the ball as well. But I've always been interested to ask that transitionary period between Guelph, McMaster, and then getting into Laurier here. I mean, all of the work, and obviously Zach had a front row seat and was on the field for the great stuff that you were doing at Guelph. To see that happen, to then transition over to McMaster, to win a championship there, which what kind of emotions are that? And then to come back to your alma mater certainly must have been a seesaw of a ride. Tell us a little bit about how all of that was.
Yeah, no, and it's been quite a journey, and I never really saw myself, as somebody that was going to be a bit of a journeyman through coaching. I spent close to 10 years at the University of Guelph, had great experiences there. Like you mentioned, I became kind of the big of the emotional up and down, became the interim head coach for 2018 when a good friend of mine was no longer the head coach of that program. And so when it became clear that they were going to go in a different direction, and that's their right. At the time, there was a lot of emotions, but I look back on it and I almost have to say thank you. Like I've become such a better coach because of this journey and the new experiences that I've gotten to experience. And then moving over to Mac, like Steph Potasic, I consider one of my mentors, right? So my last year as a player, he was my offensive coordinator. And then he was the offensive coordinator of the staff that I joined in 2004. So I kind of knew that's what I wanted to do. So I just tried to become a sponge and then learn as much as I could in those times. And then when the time came and Steph was taking over the program leading into that 19 season, once word was starting to get around that I might not be at Guelph anymore, all I know is how to be myself, right? And that was very fortunate in moments like that because my phone started to ring and had a few different opportunities that were able to be in front of me. But getting a chance to go back and work with Steph and hearing that he was considering hiring Corey and knowing that staff plus Scott Brady at the time was going to be a staff that we could put together was something that was very exciting. And I look back on it and I think the biggest reason that it worked was that Steph hired good people. And we didn't really care about titles. We didn't really care how the work was divided. We just really enjoyed working with each other. And that's something Corey and I especially really enjoyed that time together, professionally developing off of each other and kind of working together. And it was a really fun year.
Now, Coach, talking about some of those people that you got to work with in various capacities, and I love how, as you brought up, the Coach Potasic connection goes back to your time playing at Laurier. So many guys, and people I think forget about this with Coach Lang, because we think about him as the motivator, but like so many of these people you worked with, and yourself included, very pass game oriented. Obviously, we'll get into Coach Falls that much more so. He's a pass forward guy as a quarterback. Coach Jeffries obviously has that purview. Coach Potasic, Coach Grant, all these people you worked with, but all the while, as much as no doubt we'll talk about the aerial attack that you developed and became known for with this Laurier team over this past stretch you've been there, and we had some good passing attacks at Guelph. I mean, playing my cards here because I was on that line, we ran the heck out of the ball. And I think people forget about your Laurier teams that you've had right now because of a guy like Taylor Elgersma that's been there. Y'all run the ball as good as anyone else. I'm curious for you, it's obvious to be able to connect the dots. I mean, I'm happy to get in more details of the various elements of your pass game, how it's developed, of things that you've seen from some of these other coaches that are really prominent within that component of the offense. When you think of the run game, how you blend that in with your passing attack and how you've had as good as run games, both going back to Guelph and with your time at Laurier. Where do some of those influences come from, given that your experience as a wide receiver and so many of the people you've worked with also come outside the box on the offensive side?
Yeah, and I almost feel like I need to start with an apology. Like back when I got first hired, like I look back on it, I had no idea what I didn't know. Right. And I'm sure a lot of coaches are down that pathway. Like you know a certain way to play football and you start to teach people that. And the more I've learned, and obviously we've evolved quite a bit and I've evolved quite a bit over the years. But for me, our pass game looks great. It's exciting. It's explosive at times. That's what we're looking for. But it all starts with the ability and the threat to be able to run the ball. Right. If we don't have the ability to run the ball, none of the pass game works. And the biggest area I think I would say it evolved was, we do a little bit of quick game, but it's all now making sure that you can run the ball efficiently through the RPO game. Right. And so I would say 60% of our offense at present is probably just straight RPO game. And the evolution of it all is you run the ball when the numbers or, the angles are good. And you throw the ball when the numbers or the angles aren't good. And it's kind of like offensive coordinator trying to always have the whiteboard marker last when it comes to something like that with the run game. And it's been a lot of great influences over the years. And you mentioned a bunch of them. Got to work with Steve Samara out east, and there's a lot
Of
of people
course.
that could be added to that list as well.
Yeah, we'll certainly have to think that one of the guys of your most recent hire and coach Zach Scotto, one of the best to do it, is also one of those guys being like, hey, we have matchups on the ground. Let's run the damn ball. I know you want 500 in the air, but I want 2 on the ground. Let's run the ball. And still, to this day, you've had some of the best offenses that I think Zach or I have seen. The number one favorite play of all time that I've seen against you guys, pretty sure was in a playoff game. Quads to the left, power to the
Laomi
boundary.
Ojatalayo
Laomi
boundary.
Ojatalayo blocking on the edge there on 2nd and 8, and you convert. My favorite play call of all time, and where the birth of Todd Stones Galloway came from.
Give it to Nelms.
When you look at all of those things and you start to understand your offense, you start to understand the players that you have on that offense. How do you break down play calling from a standpoint? Because there's a very traditional, well, 2nd and 8, we have to pass. 1st and 10, we likely should set up the run. But obviously that doesn't always set in with you. And I'm not saying give away all of your secrets here. But
No.
when you come and you break down film, you break down how you play call, what are some of the priorities that you have, and how do you view as something like that would be a very ballsy call on a 2nd and 8 versus, no, I have total confidence that we're going to get this?
Yeah, no, it's good. And to me, like when I'm building a game plan, the 3 big things I look at a broad level are what personnel do they have on the field based on what personnel we have on the field? How do they align to formation? And does that give us an advantage? And what are their travel rules? So you've probably seen as well, we move the picture a lot and motion a lot. And so how do they adjust? And we don't do a lot of complicated things. Like it might look that way, but we have a lot of same as concepts. But we're just going to put a personnel, a formation, and a motion on things that are going to, what we like to think, hurt that team's defense the most. And then we push that button on that day. But for our guys, it's very similar. But at the end of the day, one of the biggest things I think I've learned is that in important moments, people matter more than play calls. And so if you need an important play call, let's get your best player of the football, right? And we've had a lot of great years, and that people have changed over the years. But if I think back to important games, Zach, in our days, we were making a 2014 playoff run. Well, that ball was going to go to the Alex Charettes and the Johnny Augustines and the Adre Frazier's of that day, right? And if we're in today's world, that football is going to go to, right, the Ethan Jordans and the Tanner Nelms that you mentioned, and people matter, right? And so sometimes, getting the ball to your reliable playmakers sometimes is just as important as thinking you have the perfect play call.
Well, it's so funny because we got the privilege of talking to Coach McConkey a couple weeks back, and it's no surprise that individuals with these philosophies are having such success because he talks about the same idea of at the end of the day, how do I get the ball into my playmakers' hands? And I do want to dive into those playmakers. Obviously, at the end of the day, as exciting it is as far as who the personnel is and the individuals calling the shots, setting the culture, comes down to the athletes on the field. That's what we all care about and giving them the opportunity to have success. But, I still want to just ask about the turnover in terms of from Coach Faulds to yourself. Obviously, when there is a change of leadership, there can come a change of aspects in the culture, but no doubt there are things that you want to keep the same. What are some of those maybe big picture overarching ideas in terms of just who the Laurier Golden Hawks are, in terms of the things that you believe these do not change? This is just core Laurier Golden Hawk football from even before Folds was there. That never changes. And what are maybe some of the things that I'm sure as any coach in a similar situation looks forward to having the opportunity to say well, here are some things that I do want to try to implement or do a little different. Like, how do you balance that given the tradition and looking forward?
Yeah, and I think that's what kind of uniquely positions me, I guess I would say. I kind of know about the tradition, but has also been around for over half of Michael's tenure as well, right? And so it's a different way to look at it. But often when there's a coaching change, it's either through like the opportunity that Michael took in retirement, or there was a change needed, right? And this is not really either of those. This is a program that we all feel like was doing well, is in a good direction. has a great locker room and a great close-knit culture. And so the challenge that comes with that is making sure that you don't disrupt that culture or change that culture too much, but add on and build to that culture. And I think that's been a lot of what the talk has been around lately, is that our players are our culture, right? Our players are our best recruiters. They're the reason we are successful. And that won't change. Like, that part of it is there. Will small things change? Like, yeah, my personality is a little different. I'm a little more analytical. I'm not gonna chug a rock star and put my fist through a locker or anything like that. Right. But so it's going to have a little bit more of our personality on it. But, I learned from Gary Jeffries. Like, I'm going to be a love first. I don't care who gets the credit. Let's be all adults and let's take this thing collaboratively to the victory line. And I think that personality might show a little bit more, but the personality you've seen on offense is kind of my personality, right? And so we're going to kind of be a little bit arrogant and cocky on game day, but we're going to be well spoken and we're going to be methodical about it.
Still one of the, again, a lot of my favorite memories have come surrounding Laurier football the past number of years here, which has been nice. But I believe it was last year when the stands are first getting in there, I had a chance to watch the game from up in the booth right next to everybody calling. And the amount of times that you had a play call and then a shit-eating grin on your face when you see the formation, you're like, yeah, I called the right one. Yeah, we got this one here about we're going to go hook. And then on that the third or fourth hook against Windsor, now we're going to go hook and go. And then, so he just so happens to be wide open in the end zone here because that corner has been biting like freaking crazy. And you've been setting that up constantly here. But I'm curious, and again, I'm sure there's been a number of things that has happened, or maybe a couple of meetings or responsibilities as the head coach now that you didn't have last year that are taking some of your time away that you have to focus on as well as everything else. But we've mentioned a lot of the other offensive minds that have really helped you here. But let's not forget, when you're at Guelph, you've got one of the best in K-Mac that you're going up against. You're up against Scott Brady at McMaster, and then Coach V at Laurier, one of the best, been doing it the longest time and a legend in the game itself. What are some of the things you pull from defensive coordinators? Obviously, the X's and O's piece of it, you have to make sure that you are planning up a good probable game plan against them, especially in training camp or whatever else. But what are some of the things that you've learned from them that have helped to make you a better offensive coach and just better head coach as well?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And like, I've been so fortunate, right? And, I'll take Coach V as an example. Like, I use him as a sounding board all the time, right? And so I'll walk into his office multiple days throughout the week and just throw ideas on the board. And just sometimes it's, how would you defend this? How would this put you under stress? And I think the constant learning like that is important, right? And so I also feel like because of the way we practice, the tempo we practice, the amount of reps we get in practice, and the quality of defense we go against, our guys go out there with a lot of confidence during the season that, we struggle during the week. We struggle during the off season because we're going up against, and I'm biased, but the best defense in the country, right? Probably 2,000 plays a year, right? It makes the 60 plays on game day seem that much easier. And that's part of our story. Like, even when we're recruiting offensive players, we talk about development and being good at developing players. We don't want game day to be the most difficult day of the week. We want all the times in between to be the most difficult times so that we feel as prepared as possible for game day. And having, the best defense in the country only makes our job easier when we get to game day.
Now, Coach, looking at some of the players that have made these teams so special, obviously, yeah, we mentioned his name already. What Taylor did during his time there was spectacular, but then you bring in an outstanding kid in Cal Wither to, fill his shoes, and he does so immaculately last year. He's moved on south of the border. You think about a guy like Ethan Jordan, who's defined so much of what's made this offense that is so special this, these handful of years. He's now gone. That offensive line, losing a couple of the big boys, a couple other guys drafted that I forget the full status of him. We mentioned a guy like Laomi and what he does as just on specials and as a big body in receiving, and Spate and Parcelidis. A lot of moving parts in that offense. I want to talk defensively as well. We mentioned some of the running backs that have been in and out, and obviously you talked about Lightning, Jackson, Young, Tayshawn, what he can do back there. But specifically looking at some of those pieces that, and again, whether you know if some of any of those guys that got drafted are back entirely yet or otherwise, lot of moving parts going into this year. As you mentioned, you're still running the offense. What have been some of your thoughts going through the offseason with recruiting, knowing some of the moves that have been happening, some of the players that you're unsure of at certain moments? What's kind of been the early goes, or not so early anymore, of the offensive side of the offseason?
Yeah, and I guess I'll start by saying I think this has been one of our best off seasons yet. Like, it's a very hungry group. Obviously, the finish to our season last year wasn't what our expectation was or what our hope was. And if we're doing our job correctly, like, we should be graduating players. We should be giving players that opportunity to go on and play at that next level. And we're excited for all of them. But I'm very excited about the group that we're returning, right? And I've always said it before, is like, can anybody replace an Ethan Jordan? But no. But we'll have a Ryan Hughes and a Jackson Stebbings and a Jace Atkinson and a Keon Robinson ready to play a bigger role, and guys like that. Right? Do you replace a Taylor or a Cal? No, they were very different. But we love our quarterback room, and we think we're in a great position to continue that success. So very, very happy with where the offense is at. Is it going to look a little different? Every year it looks a little different. It's funny when Taylor was at the helm. We were thought of as a very pass first, pass heavy offense. Cal came in and I think threw for like 26 touchdowns. So we were different. But I think the thing that gets lost in that is I think we were still third in rushing, right? And so, we were just a little bit more methodical in the way we approached it while we got him comfortable with the offense and his reads in the system. So it'll be in that direction again, and we'll get people comfortable. But we've got a lot of veterans returning as well, and like you mentioned, the Tayshawns and the Darian Bassics and a lot of guys that are ready. And Ryan Spate will be back as well, and so there's going to be a lot of great guys returning. So we're excited, and it's the same thing on the defensive side of the ball, right? Like, we're built to stop the run, right? And I feel very confident that we're between the Andre Buttes and the Mateo LaQuintanas and the Joey Eglingtons and the entire linebacking core back, like, that we're going to be built very similarly. And so very, very excited about this year's version of the offense and the team in general.
Well, I think, once again, something that speaks to the culture that you guys have built there. I'm fairly certain if it wasn't the first, it was the second, but I'm pretty sure the very first spring practice that you guys had, I was in attendance for. And it was before that beautiful dome was built, and it is a beauty. It's the best dome that I've ever seen or been in. The ceilings are so high and everything, so it's truly incredible that you have that. But it was in that old building that you guys still were going at, and I walked in, and everybody, Balch is gone. What is this going to mean? What is this going to? And then you look around, you go, it's the exact same. It's the same kind of expectation. It's not the exact same because of the players. Obviously, the players have gone, but the expectation is there. The high caliber of play is there. The communication, everything else is the exact same. And I think, again, a credit to Michael Falds. He brings a lot of energy when he's out in coaching, and he has an expectation, but you can tell that that's bled into the players that are there, where you, as a head coach now, don't need to be the big rah guy because your players have that extra level of intensity and everything. And so, while yes, you don't have a number of guys in the offensive line, and Potvin gone, Rietveld gone, I think Spencer Walsh should be back because he was injured and he should be coming back as well. So there's a number of guys in there that are potentially gone but coming back, and obviously, you guys could lose 20 receivers, and I'd still say you probably have the best receiving core in the country here with just the way you guys recruit. And the moment that Falls leaves as well, 5 more receivers right off the bat committed to the university, which is incredible. But again, You talk about the culture piece, and I don't think that people truly understand just how important it is where you can have a head coach moving on. And yes, the offensive coordinator moves into the head coach, but there's still changes there. A Heck Crichton nominee quarterback 2 years in a row, both gone. And now your Heck Crichton, who was coaching on the sidelines, also gone. Lots of things that you could say there's a number of changes on, but the level of intensity and the level of expectation was still sky high, and you guys are performing at a very high level. As a coach, like you mentioned, you wanna put your own spin on things. You want to impress yourself, but you're also like, I got a really good thing going here. Let's keep a lot of things the same way. What are your steps going into things? Has anything changed when you're doing practice plans, or how are you taking a look at, what spring camp was, and then obviously looking ahead into training camp?
Yeah, and I'll kind of give the comparison of both, but like some of the great things that the really good head coaches do is they hire good people, right? And so, if I go back to Steph Potasic, right? And, Steph hired myself and Corey and kept Scott Brady, and those are all people that are head coaches now, right? And so hiring good people, I think is important. And so, the one thing I'll make sure I give Michael credit for, and not like to say hiring me was a great decision, but keeping Ron and bringing on Mike Daly and Matt Robichaux, right? Elevating someone like Zach Scotto and myself really put us in a position where he could just focus on non-football things. And so when we talk about practice planning and we talk about that was pretty much all collaboratively done by the coordinators, right? And so a lot of that stuff doesn't need to change. And working with Coach V, he's awesome. It's just kind of, well, whatever you guys need, I'll make it work. Like, well, the defense will come out angry every week. Don't worry. If you need 5 more minutes of this or 10 more minutes of that, he's like, I don't care. Right. So it kind of been very lucky as to, I've been doing a lot of the practice planning based on what we think that version of the offense's needs are. And it's been pretty smooth that way. So I don't think there's a lot of change in that direction. I think the focus has kind of been on protecting the culture and making sure that the standard doesn't just stay the same, but the standard continues to improve, right? And that's kind of where our focus has been through this offseason.
Sticking with that theme of culture, and I think we've kind of talked about this a bit in passing over the years. So much of when I think about Laurier, and I think what's made it such a special place is that grittiness that is both a tribute to the existing culture of the leaders, Coach V, Coach Falls, to all the way back, like the whole, family that's been there for years. But also part of that grittiness was, the fact that sometimes when you compare school to school, our facilities aren't as nice as those guys down the street. Doesn't matter. We're out here in the cold, I remember getting to interview Ayo Ajayi years ago, and he was talking about how Coach Falls, no matter what the end of the season held for the team in terms of playoff success or even make the playoffs, no, we're going right up until the Vanier. We're going to have that mindset correct, so on and so forth. Now, in some ways, the OUA, having both you guys and Western get knocked out, neither as Yates Cup champions, is probably scary for every other 9 teams because both of you are competing for saying who's got the bigger chip on your shoulder. But how do you balance that piece on, and you probably got to see a little bit at Guelph as like kind of plucky, middle of the pack school that then went on a run. We became a strong team. And then with that, of course, then you got these nice facilities. And like, is there a balancing act you have to do as a coach when so much of what makes your club special is rooted in that whole underdog mentality? No one's going to believe on us. We don't even get the nicest equipment, this, that, and the third. When you're a national brand now, you have newer facilities, and from a recruiting standpoint, which I know we haven't really talked about all that much, and I do want to dive into, you are one of the hot commodities. How do you balance that aspect of a team that has been known to be a little gritty?
Yeah, no, it's a good question, and it's something I learned a lot at my time at Guelph because what we were a part of, and as I got there in 2011, we were one of the few grass teams left in the country.
Though we didn't practice on grass.
Yeah,
that was always an interesting one. Sorry.
Yeah. So we didn't have much either, right? And you kind of develop that grit, and I think one of the biggest things that learning through that experience and kind of going through kind of being from one of the lower end facilities to one of the nicer facilities is You can't change what you're rooted in, right? And this program is rooted in hard work. All we know is hard work. And this program is rooted in the people, right? And so, having been through that, I know that that's never going to change. We're going to go after the kind of athletes that what you see is what you get, right? When our recruits come on campus, they're not seeing their name in lights on a scoreboard. They're not being taken out for a steak dinner. Like, we're going to eat in the cafeteria because that's what it's going to be when you go here. We want it to be an authentic, what you see is what you get experience. So that when they come here as freshmen, there's no surprises. That it's going to be hard. We're going to coach you hard, but we feel like we have a model that's going to help you become the best version of yourself.
Yeah, I love to hear that kind of thing. And I think there's no player that kind of exemplifies that more, in my opinion, at least in the interim here, than one Cody Blackshaw. I got a chance to come out to training camp again and watch you guys go, and I'm watching him going, holy smokes, he looks really good. And I think on a pre-show, I said, this is a guy we have to look at for an All-Canadian. And he comes up to me afterwards in spring camp. He's like, you know what? I thought you were crazy saying I was going to be an All-Canadian this year, but damn, it looks like you were right. And you talk about a guy that just is good at what he does, great at what he does, but is just, I'm going to put my head to the ground and I'm just going to work, and I'm going to work like crazy. And hopefully we win with a championship at the end of the day, but wherever the chips fall, they fall. And then you poke his head back up, you take a look around and go, oh, I was the best center in all of the country. I was the number one All-Canadian there. But is not flashy about it, doesn't care about it. And even a guy like Ethan Jordan, who wins the Heck Crichton this past year, yeah, he's happy about it and he showcases it, but like still the calm, humble dude that you have a chance to meet and hang out with every single day. And it's the same thing with Taylor. There's that arrogance that you talk about, that cockiness, that swagger and everything, but like he had that in first year and he had that in his last year. And no amount of trophies changed that, because that's who he is. So again, we've had this conversation a number of times, but just to put it on the record here, when you have a guy like a Taylor Elgersma, like a Cal Wither, or an Ethan Jordan, who have these personalities and want to do these things, and if you have a Taylor Elgersma who wants to rush for a first down, he puts his throwing shoulder into a linebacker in order to run somebody over. How do you try to coach this kid, and how do you try to coach these special players so that they fit within your offense, but they're still unique to who they are?
Yeah, and I think that kind of comes down to making sure that you understand who they are as a person, right? Like, and again, my job is not to fit any of these guys in a box, right? Like, my job is to let their personality shine, kind of let their skill set shine, and that's where I say, like, the offense maybe from the outside doesn't totally look like it makes drastic changes from year to year, but it's going to change every year based on who our athletes are, what their skill sets are, what their personalities even are, to make sure that, they're having fun playing football, and that game day is a celebration of all that fun, right? And the guys joke around sometimes after the game. They'll hear conversations with players from other teams, during the game, and they'll just say, like, why does it look like you guys are having so much more fun than us? Right. And it's part of our MO. Like, we'd say, like, these guys have full-time jobs, full-time students, workouts, film sessions. We treat game day like a celebration. And we let our guys have fun as long as it's not pointed at the other team. They celebrate first downs, they celebrate pass breakups, right? They celebrate getting off the field. Like, this game should be fun. And we kind of let those personalities come out instead of trying to fit them in a box and just do what we say.
I mean, that makes me think of one of the many quotes I love referencing of JT Suey of Football Ontario. It's just that at the end of the day, sports are games. Games are meant to be fun. So I'm a big fan that that's something that you cherish there. Coach, I want to ask about, we've been talking about some of the players on the team and that idea of culture. And a guy that came in late in his career as a player in the OUA, and unfortunately injury riddled, didn't get to have too much time on the field, but also matches, I think, when I think about guys that Laurier bring in so well, I think GTA guys, and Harnoor Dhaliwal, who I was such a big fan of from his time in Ottawa, coming in for his fifth year, and again, just so heartbreaking that injuries riddled so much of his time there. What was that transition like, bringing in a guy who is so veteran, played on some really strong defenses with the GGs, in terms of him meshing with the culture in at Laurier? Again, I do feel like Laurier, and as a Toronto guy, I love it. I think had done as good as any other OUA school of saying, whether it's from the core, from the periphery, Brampton, Mississauga, Scarborough, bringing those guys in. What was his time coming in like, despite not being able to perhaps have the impact on the field that he and no doubt folks in the Laurier community wanted to see?
Yeah, and it is unfortunate. He had coming off of a major injury, an ACL injury coming to us, very motivated, very, very smart, and just kind of wasn't able to get to 100% health, and kind of lingering things, I'd say, kind of prevented him from reaching that potential and what he wanted to do with his time. But some of the best memories I have with him is not only would he come in and meet with Coach V regularly, he wanted to come in and meet with me as well, right? And so he was a real student of the game. And so, they would be out in the summer on a summer throw around on the field, and then I'd see him in the office Monday, and he's like, the guys ran this concept here on the weekend. He's like, what are you trying to accomplish? Who are you trying to put in stress? Right? Because he wanted to understand the game better. And that's what I really like about a lot of our guys, including him, is that, we involve them in the process a lot. Coach V will have, a lot of his defensive leaders, they'll come in on I think it's a Monday afternoon, and he goes through the game plan with them and makes sure they're okay with it. Right? Like, we run the game plan by our guys. And I always say to the offense, it doesn't matter where the idea comes from. Like, I'm all ears, right? I think back to, I think it was 2024, Laomi came with an idea early in the week against Queens in the regular season. We ran it and he scored a touchdown. Right. And so, I make sure that when guys do that, as long as it's rooted in the foundation of they understand the game and they've watched the film, and they see it, I don't care where the credit comes from. But we got a lot of really smart players, and Harnour was one of them.
Mm-hmm. Well, sticking on the player front, and at some point in time, we should probably actually talk about the season and everything else. But again, it's just so much damn fun talking with you, Coach. I would love to hear from your perspective the growth and the development of one Tayshaun Jackson, a guy who explodes out onto the scene in 2024 as one of the best returners I've ever seen. The shiftiness, the vision, and the speed that he has. But again, there's a lot of people who are out there that I'm sure, like, he's done his whole life are looking at his size. Well, there's so much. He's a returner, but he couldn't be doing all that. And then he's your primary running back at times and doing really well. His first game of the season against Guelph, 14 carries, 76 yards, and a touchdown. And the long is 13. So it's not like he just busted one down the seam. Like, he was consistent and methodical in doing his thing there. But if you can, just speak a little bit about that young man's progression from just being that lone returner. And you had some phenomenal running backs in 24. Tanner Nell's obviously being one of them, to now getting his chance as a running back and really showcasing his ability and what he can do.
Yeah, Tayshaun's special. Like, he's a generational talent, like some of the other guys that have gone through this program. The interesting story I still like to tell about Tayshaun is that Coach V did a great job recruiting Jesse Wilkins-Flaherty out of the Windsor area. And he just asked Jesse, like, who is the best player in Windsor that nobody's recruiting? And Jesse immediately said Tayshaun. And so, that's how our relationship started with Tayshaun. He gave us his contact info. We had him on a visit, and he came to be that he became a Golden Hawk. But, a lot of people overlooked him because of his size, right? And so, obviously, we're the fortunate benefactor. And he came in at a time in 23. A lot of people don't know that he actually didn't dress a game in his first year. Came in 23 and was on our scout team. And eventually Coach V came down and was kind of just like, get this guy off our scout team. Yeah. At some point, this is going to hurt our confidence, right? So 2024, he obviously had a breakout season as a returner, started to get some carries. And he just continued that success, and it's all him. Like, he's such a hardworking kid, kind of not a typical, but like an undersized chip on his shoulder because he's been passed up by some people. We've got a lot of those kind of stories on our team, like chip on their shoulder, didn't get recruited by a certain school, or chip on their shoulder based on their personal situations, or and has just flourished, right? And the battle for pound strongest player on our team was probably between him and Sebastian Parcelidis, and he might own Tayshaun might own that now that Seb is a Toronto Argonaut.
Oh my God.
Well, Coach, I imagine that was a similar conversation K-Mac was having with you circa 2012, 2013 of like, this Bader guy's just embarrassing Cam Thorne and Jeff Finley.
Yeah.
Come on, you got to get him off our scout team. Taking a look at the schedule ahead, one of the things that despite, last year being a slight change from this pattern that we've had, and maybe it's what led to the very skewed result y'all had in London, has been these Western Laurier matchups as the crown jewel of the season. And going back to 2023 and 24, it was 2 7-0s battling one another, if I'm remembering that correctly. Last year, major implications despite the clear distinction between where you two teams were at. This year especially, and not to look past the rest of the schedule, because honestly, as much as there is that piece on both you guys having that battle for chip on the shoulders, there's some pretty strong teams from province to, from end to end in the province. But when you think about that matchup this year, end of the season, the emotions of Coach Faulds, having to go into his place, and the potentiality of both teams maybe being undefeated. And I know what you're going to say, or if you're still using the same aphorism, it's like, this is the most important game because it's the next one. I know a couple of the Coach Gallyism still, but like when that schedule did come out, like what thoughts, emotions, feelings did come to pass when you knew the inevitability of having to take on, your former, your friend and former colleague and Coach Faulds?
Yeah. And it's, again, experience kind of helps with these moments, right? Like I left the University of Guelph after 2018, and the schedule makers put Mac versus Guelph week 1, right? And so you kind of was able to go back to Guelph and get that monkey off my back week 1, and kind of and realize that at the end of the day, it's just football. It's not about me. It's not about Coach Faulds. It's about the players, right? And it's going to be two really, really good football teams playing in that last game. And you're right. I think, as much as we like to think the schedule is a little bit random, I think there's probably a reason that the last 3 out of 4 years now, Laurier versus Western has come down to the last game of the season. And 2 of the last 3, it's been 2 7-0 teams kind of battling it out for first place. And so our hope is, again, we're going to take it one game at a time, but our hope is we're in a position to give ourselves some success like that come that game towards the end of the season. But all of our focus right now is on a really, really good Guelph team that we got to play week 1 for the second year in a row as well.
Yeah, and a Guelph team that, again, like we said, was much better than what their record showcased. Obviously, you played them week 1, a 33-28 final that you guys came out on top of, and then playing them again in the playoffs, and they gave you another big scare there as well. Again, you're able to come up on top, but a very, very good Guelph team coached up by obviously Coach Soria that we're very happy for. But the rivalry in the sense that I really wanted to talk about is with the Queens Golden Gales here. Obviously, they get the championship win over you this season here, but almost for the past, 3 or 4 years, you have had tight competitive games with them in your house and in theirs. I believe it was in 2024 where the 13-10 final or the 10-9 final was decided by a single point, something along those lines, and a nasty fight. And again, I don't know if that's a Queens versus Laurier fight or if that's just a Queens versus Taylor Elgersma, because if you didn't play with them, you seem to hate that too, no matter what. Talked to so many teams on that, but there's been such a rivalry that has really been forming here between these two clubs. And obviously, you don't want to bring up, bad memories, but they were able to get that victory over you in the Yates Cup here. What is that rivalry like? What has that relationship been like with Steve Snyder's crew?
Yeah. And I've got a lot of respect for them. And I start to say I feel old when people that I've had the fortune of coaching are now full-time coaches in the OUA. So,
Yeah.
Matt Nesbitt, a former player of mine, is the offensive coordinator there. And they do a great job. I've got a lot of respect for Coach Snyder and Coach Beckmanis. they coach their guys up and they do a really good job. And I think rivalries come from two good football teams full of pride, right? And so nobody wants to lose on game day. And so I think since our games have been quite close over the last few years, and you're right, I think it was the 2023 game came down to us bringing a kick out of the end zone to preserve a single. Right, 2024 in the semifinals was another close game before we got to the eights, and so there's been a lot of close games, and I think that builds rivalries, and I think rivalries are super important in this. I think the more competitive games we can have on our schedule is better for the product, is better for the OUA. Yeah, and at the end of the day, there's a ton of respect there, and obviously our chip on our shoulder right now is the fact that we felt pretty good about last year's team, but it didn't turn our way, and we're going to use that as motivation going into this year. The only thing I kind of wish was, and I'm sure they feel the same way, is that you kind of wish that the Yates Cup rematch would be somewhere on the schedule this year.
Say it louder, Coach.
How is that not a thing? Oh.
No, and it's not a lot of people know, but the OUA did make a change this offseason, and they've created a more long-term schedule. So it is random that we're not playing it, but we now know kind of 5 years out what our schedule looks like. So our schedule will be coming out a lot sooner move forward.
Coach, when we think about some of the up-and-coming players on your team, there's obviously some of the young guys that had their moments of shine. We kind of talked about the Keon Robinson almost having not quite the Ryan Hughes effect last year that Hughes did the year before, because of course that playoff run Hughes went on in 2024 is perhaps as incredible from a quote-unquote unsung player you could have ever asked for. But you kind of see, okay, Keon seems like the next guy, and then you do the whole family tree thing, and you're like, yeah, he's probably going to be pretty good. You've been probably recruiting that kid since he was 8 years old or something like that, even younger. Who are some of the guys, though, on this Laurier team, offense, defense, or special teams, as comfortable as you feel talking about some guys that maybe haven't had their time to be heralded on the stage of, Saturdays come the fall, that you're thinking, what, to the Laurier community out there, this is the guy that you might not have seen yet, or maybe you've had, heard some whispers, but that we're really excited to see take on, or have the opportunity to take on a bigger role.
Yeah, no, and it's, you guys have known me for a while. I'm an open book. There's nothing people aren't going to see on film anyway, but I think offensively, Keon Robinson's had another great offseason, and the hope is that he plays a big role. Some of the other additions to the program, like, Quentin Springer coming over from the University of Waterloo, I think is someone that can help contribute to our program as well. But even on the O-line, very excited with the progress of some of our big men, like from the London area, Rahan is somebody that I think has a very bright future, and Carson Brooks as well are going to be probably some household names in the future. On the defensive side, we had a very good young DB core last year that was kind of behind some veterans, and so really excited to see some of the Javane Smiths and the Ben Wilsons and some of those guys kind of get their chance to step into those roles now as well. And obviously change at the kicker spot as well. Everybody's kind of known Dawson Hodge for all 5 of his years. And so the Marcus Raybrough from Nelson is all of 6'6" and has a big leg, and he's kind of ready for it to be his time as well.
Well, I love everything about that except the kicker from Nelson. I'll hold that grudge until the day I die. But you talk about an incredible team here. You talk about the coaching staff that you guys have, and not just obviously yourself and Coach V, but the young guys that you have, and Coach Scotto, Coach Christian, and everybody else on that staff here as well. It's something that, again, for the Laurier faithful out there, you got to be extremely excited about how things are going, especially at the fact that I can't tell you how many people have come up to me, well, they don't have Cal Wither anymore. They don't have Heck Crichton caliber quarterback anymore. Like, what are they going to do? I think they're going to be okay. I think we're going to be okay at Laurier. I think they're going to have a pretty good team here going into this again. But still, when you look across the board and you look at the coaching staff that you guys have. Like, speak to me a little bit about some of the guys you have. You mentioned, obviously, a former teammate of mine, Mike Daly, and what he brings to that staff, but a Christian Carrata, Zach Scotto, like, what do those guys mean to you and your staff as well?
No, they're hugely important. And I'll start with Zach because I work with Zach every day. And he is like having another offensive coordinator in the office every day. And so he's our run game coordinator. And, at the start of every week, he comes up and presents every run game idea and credit to, how well we keep our quarterback on his feet in the pass game and how well we run the football. I take zero credit. That's all him. Right. And so he's great to work with. Christian's another really young, bright mind that Coach V has really taken under his wing as well. And so he's our assistant defensive coordinator now here as well. And so he's learned a lot, but he also brings a lot to the table. So he's always learning, always getting better. But the big thing I'll say is it's about the people. A lot of these people are volunteering their time. They don't get paid a lot. I look around the room at the end of the day when we get off the field. And I think the thing that I enjoy the most is that even if we weren't coaching football, I would still love to hang out with this entire room, right? We would still go for a beer together, all these people in this room. And I think that's what makes it work. Like, I genuinely enjoy everybody in the room's company as a human being as much as I enjoy coaching with them. And I think that's really important because we spend a lot of time together as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, honestly, just getting a chance myself to hang out with your coaching staff has been incredible. Hearing stories from Rudsey or Dave Morrissey and then laughing it up with you guys as well has really been amazing. And I can say it's a very unique scenario where you have the culture of a team, but the culture of a coaching staff is not always the exact same. And I think you guys have easily one of the very best. I just wanted to say that.
And it's not, the players are smart. Right. Like, if there's tension amongst the coaching staff, if there's anything like that, like they feel it and they know it. And I hope anyway, they get the sense that we genuinely do like each other. We genuinely do care about each other. And we respect each other's ideas as well. And sorry if you've had to hang out with Ruds too much.
Oh, talk about guys on lists I want to have a beer with. Rutland is high up on that one.
Yes.
Coach, first off, does your weekly game plan you give out to your players still include the quick and dirty breakdown?
It does.
Okay,
Yeah.
so with that in mind, Coach, give us, because I asked some formulation of this to every coach we had the pleasure of having on, in terms of what sort of the mentality going into the off season, into the summer, as we prepare for next season. But given that you're keeping up that tradition, what's the quick and dirty for the Laurier Golden Hawks as we are in late June here, 2026, getting ready for a big year coming up in the fall?
Yeah, I think overarching what I keep telling the guys, and we got together not too long ago, is, everybody talks about goals. Like, for us, like, we're done talking about goals. Everybody's got the same goal. We all open training camp hoping to be Vanier Cup champions. I just keep reminding them, what are they willing to commit to achieve their goals? And so, I like to think that we're a program that all we know is hard work. And right now the guys are committed to their goal of, making sure that there's absolutely no regrets come August 14th, that they've done everything they could with this semester, with this 4 months, because we feel really good about our body of work that got put in the winter. But now we're in the middle of our body of work that's getting ready for August. And so making sure that the guys are committing to their goals and making good decisions every day is right where our focus is.
Last question I have for you here, Coach. We talk about you being the quarterback guru that's here. And again, I'm not asking you to share any of your secrets and how you're getting these guys to do their thing here, but what are some of the things that you look for in a potential quarterback to come? Because you've got the receivers that you do. You can take an average looking quarterback and make them really good, but you've had really good quarterbacks that can also take receivers and make them look even better. So what are some of the aspects in a young recruit as a quarterback that you're looking for that you think can make the next step into being the quarterback for the Laurier Golden Hawks?
Yeah, and I'm sure it's not that different everywhere else, but like for me, I recruit quarterbacks very differently than any other position, right? Like when you think about O-line, like there's 5 of them on the field, and a couple of them either dress rotationally or have to have versatility. There's field and boundary ends. Like quarterback, there's only one guy. And, everybody else behind him has to be that guy's, number one fan while trying to deep down take that guy's job. And so when there's just one guy that also, whether he chooses to or not, is going to be looked at as the leader of the program, to me, just being able to throw a spiral, just being able to throw a good football might be 10 to 15% of what I'm looking at. And so I spend a lot of time, me recruiting quarterbacks is almost like a two-way interview. And so I make sure, the very first question I ask when they come on a visit and we get on the whiteboard is like, what's your favorite route you like to throw? What's your favorite concept? Let's get on the whiteboard. Let's start drawing some defenses up. Let's start drawing. I just want to see how they see football. And often some of the best quarterbacks I've ever worked with are people that I see football similarly with. Because if you don't, as much as we say we're trying to evolve every year and do things, if you can find a quarterback that sees the game in a similar way you do, it's like having another coach on the field, right? Instead of, having to run a system that's kind of like, this is what we're running, throw the ball here, or this is what we're running, it's like having another coach out there that can then be a general on the field and help others out. Taylor being a recent example, like, Taylor and I obviously had some different parts to our personality, but like we saw the game identically to the point where he was basically a coach and I could give him a lot of freedom. Like I'll say that 2024 year, our game plans were completely collaborative. He had just as much say as I did. And our offense right now, even still, probably runs at 60+% of the decisions are being made by the quarterback at the line of scrimmage. Right. And so I try to make sure that, I'm putting them in a good position, but then I trust our offensive players to make good decisions at the line of scrimmage as well.
Coach, I just coming to mind here. I have to ask, talking about quarterbacks you played with, who throws a better field out, Taylor Elgersma or Mac Chaboy Blewett?
Very similar. Yeah. No, Mac had one of the bigger arms I think that we've ever been around. Yeah, and had a frame very similar to Taylor to boot. But no, Taylor throws the football. I think everybody sees the way Taylor throws the football and gets very impressed with it. Taylor's probably the smartest tell once quarterback I've ever worked with. Right. And when you only ever have to tell somebody once, it's kind of amazing over a 5-year career how many things they can pick up along the way.
Well, Chaboy's still the legend of that Florida trip. That's
I will circle back and say though, like I think the best part of coaching quarterbacks that I've been able to do is recruiting great quarterbacks. Right? I'm not completely transforming them. I'm not taking them from a low floor to a high ceiling. Like these are guys that are buying into what we're running and they've committed to that greatness. Like I know Taylor gets talked about a lot, but I was part of the process that had to cut him from Team Ontario for Keegan Hall, I think it was, and Alex Vreekin back in his year, right? And so, he's a guy that self-committed to being one of the greatest that ever played U Sport.
I think that was just you sandbagging the other coaches. Oh, this guy's no good. We don't want him. We don't want him here. Let me just recruit him on the side while he's not playing football at Team O. But yeah. Again, I know I said last question, but actual last question here. We talked about him so much. What are some of your thoughts on his career that has now had him? And again, I want the very best for him. He's a guy that I admire, even though he's my younger in terms of his own work ethic and everything else. But selfishly, I am happy that he's throwing in Canadian soil and he's doing his thing up north here. But from what you've spoken to him about and your own thoughts, what have you thought about his journey from being your quarterback to almost winning a Vanier Cup to going down to the States to coaching with you to going down to the States again and then coming back up to play in the CFL for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers? Yeah,
and at the end of the day, I just want him to be happy, and it's been quite a journey for him, and an emotional journey for him, I will probably say as well. And sometimes it's hard for people, and everybody's journey is very different. Some of us in U Sport, our journey went like this in U Sport. He had a very linear kind of journey in U Sport, right? And so had success, had more success, And then, it wasn't until the Green Bay Packers that he kind of got told he wasn't good enough for the first time. Right. And so, and even that, I think he learned that football is a business at the professional level. So it's less about was he good enough? He was definitely good enough. He learned the business side of things very quickly. But I'm just happy he's playing football. He's getting to compete. I wish it would have worked out for him in the UFL. He was about to become the starter there, but they couldn't get things sorted out from a visa side of things. But ultimately, him getting a chance to be on the field every day and practice and learn from someone like Zach Collaros and have a bright future, I think is one of the best scenarios for him right now.
He is the head coach and offensive coordinator of the Laurier Golden Hawks, Coach Todd Stones Galloway, and someone that we are both privileged to call a friend and someone we admire a ton. Coach, thank you so much for joining us today, talking to us about your journey in football, taking over for the Laurier Golden Hawks, and we're both so excited to see what's in store for your team this upcoming fall. Thank you again, Coach.
No, thank you guys. And I know some other people have said it as well, but love what you guys do. I'm a huge fan, huge listener as well. And I think you guys are an important voice now, not just for the OUA, but for all of U Sports. So thank you guys for what you do.
That means the world, Coach. Well, the exit meetings carry on, though we are getting closer to the end. We're into the conference championship teams, so you'll have to tune in next week to see who we're talking about right here at the 55.